If your doctor has ever looked at your lab results, paused, and said the words, "Your blood sugar is elevated," you know exactly what that moment feels like. A quiet kind of dread, a feeling that something is slipping. Maybe you already have a diagnosis of prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. Maybe you're just watching the numbers climb and wondering what you can actually do about it. Whatever brought you here today, I want you to know this. Food is one of the most powerful tools you have. Not a magic cure, not a replacement for your medication or your doctor's care, but a genuine science-backed lever you can pull starting today. And in the next 40 minutes, I am going to walk you through everything. The biology behind blood sugar, the foods that work, the foods that secretly sabotage you, the specific mechanisms by which each of these foods helps your body, and the practical ways to actually build them into your life. No fluff, no miracle claims. Just the real science, explained clearly. Let's start at the beginning. Because before you can fix a problem, you have to understand exactly what the problem is. Blood sugar, or blood glucose, is the primary fuel source for every cell in your body. When you eat, your digestive system breaks carbohydrates down into glucose, and that glucose enters your bloodstream. Your pancreas detects the rise and releases a hormone called insulin. Think of insulin as the key that unlocks the door to your body's cells, allowing glucose to move out of the blood and into the cells where it's burned for energy or stored for later use. In a healthy body, this system works beautifully. You eat, glucose rises, insulin responds, glucose clears, levels return to normal within about 2 hours. Elegant, automatic, self-regulating. The problems begin when this system starts to break down, and it breaks down in two main ways. The first is insulin resistance. This is when your muscle cells, fat cells, and liver cells stop responding efficiently to the insulin signal. The key still works, but the lock has gotten stiff. Your pancreas compensates by producing more and more insulin, working overtime to get the glucose cleared. For a while, it succeeds, but blood sugar levels spend more time elevated than they should. Cells are bathed in glucose they can't use. Damage accumulates silently. The second problem is when the pancreas itself starts to fail, producing less insulin than the body needs. At that point, glucose has nowhere to go. It builds up in the blood. And chronically elevated blood sugar, what we call hyperglycemia, damages blood vessels, nerves, kidneys, eyes, and heart tissue over years and decades. This is why the numbers matter so much. A fasting blood glucose under 100 milligrams per deciliter is normal. Between 100 and 125 means prediabetes. Your body is struggling, the warning lights are on, but you still have time to turn this around. Above 126 on two separate tests is the threshold for type 2 diabetes. An A1C, which reflects your average blood sugar over roughly 3 months, below 5.7% is normal. Between 5.7 and 6.4 is prediabetes. Above 6.5 is diabetes. Now here is the crucial thing I want you to hold on to throughout everything that follows. The foods you eat determine how hard your pancreas has to work, how long your blood sugar stays elevated after every single meal, and over time, whether your insulin sensitivity improves or worsens. Food is not peripheral to this conversation. Food is central to it, and the right foods don't just slow the rise, they actively improve the machinery. Now let's talk about what actually makes a food good or bad for blood sugar. There are 3 concepts you need to understand. The first is the glycemic index. The glycemic index, or GI, ranks foods on a scale from 0 to 100 based on how quickly they raise blood glucose compared to pure glucose. High GI foods digest rapidly and send a surge of glucose into the bloodstream all at once, a spike. Low GI foods digest slowly and release glucose gradually, keeping the rise gentle and the fall steady. White bread, GI of around 70, boiled white rice, around 73, cornflakes, up to 80. On the other side, lentils come in around 30, steel-cut oats around 55, an apple around 36. The second concept is glycemic load, which factors in portion size. A watermelon has a high GI, but a low glycemic load because a typical serving doesn't actually contain that much carbohydrate. Context matters. The third concept, and this one is underappreciated, is meal composition. When you eat any carbohydrate alongside fiber, protein, or healthy fat, the digestion of that carbohydrate slows dramatically. The glucose is released more gently. The spike is blunted. This is why the combination of foods you eat together matters enormously, and why eating a handful of crackers alone is very different from eating those crackers with a protein and a fat. Keep all three of these concepts in mind as we go through the foods, because what you'll see again and again is that the best foods for blood sugar either score low on the glycemic index, slow the digestion of everything else around them, or improve the sensitivity of your cells to insulin directly. Let's start with the first and arguably most important category: leafy green vegetables. Spinach, kale, Swiss chard, collard greens, romaine, arugula, bok choy. These vegetables have glycemic loads that are essentially zero. Per cup of spinach, the glycemic load is less than 1. You could eat a pound of spinach and your blood sugar would barely register a response. But the benefit goes far beyond simply not raising blood sugar. Leafy greens are extraordinarily rich in magnesium. And magnesium plays a direct mechanistic role in insulin function. It is involved in the activation of insulin receptors on your cells. Low magnesium levels are strongly associated with insulin resistance. A major prospective study following over 41,000 women found that diets high in magnesium substantially lowered the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Leafy greens are also packed with fiber, vitamins A, C, and K, and plant compounds that reduce inflammation, a key driver of insulin resistance. Practically, the recommendation from most endocrinologists and dietitians is to fill at least half your plate with non-starchy vegetables at every meal and to eat them first. This is not arbitrary advice. A research study published in peer-reviewed nutrition literature found that eating vegetables before carbohydrates significantly reduced post-meal blood glucose and insulin levels at 30 and 60 minutes after eating, regardless of eating speed. When you put the vegetables in first, you're essentially creating a physical and chemical barrier in your gut that slows the digestion of the carbohydrates that follow. It's a simple, free, zero-calorie intervention that works immediately. Start with the vegetables, every time, moving from leafy greens to the broader category of non-starchy vegetables: broccoli, cauliflower, bell peppers, zucchini, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, green beans, mushrooms, tomatoes, onions. The logic is the same: high fiber, low carbohydrate, low glycemic impact. Broccoli in particular contains a compound called sulforaphane, which research suggests may help reduce insulin resistance and lower fasting blood glucose. These vegetables are some of the most nutritionally dense foods available to human beings, and they are fundamentally blood sugar neutral. Load up on them without fear. Now let's talk about fiber in more depth, because fiber is arguably the single most important dietary concept when it comes to blood sugar management. There are two types of fiber: soluble and insoluble. Both are important, but soluble fiber is the one most directly relevant to blood sugar. Soluble fiber dissolves in water and forms a thick, viscous gel in your gut. This gel slows the movement of food through your digestive tract, slows the absorption of glucose, and essentially turns a potential blood sugar spike into a gentle, slow rise. Foods highest in soluble fiber include oats, legumes, chia seeds, flaxseed, apples, citrus fruits, and psyllium husk. Let's talk about oats specifically. A bowl of steel-cut or rolled oats, not the instant flavored packets, those are processed and often contain added sugar, is one of the most evidence-backed breakfasts for blood sugar management. Oats contain a specific type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan. Beta-glucan has been shown in multiple clinical trials to reduce post-meal blood glucose spikes, improve insulin sensitivity, and lower A1C levels over time. The key distinction: steel-cut oats have a GI of around 55. Instant oats can be in the 70s. The more processed the grain, the faster it breaks down. Whole grains in general follow this principle: brown rice versus white rice, whole wheat bread versus white bread, quinoa, farro, barley. The outer shell of an intact grain, the bran, is where the fiber lives. When that bran is stripped away in processing, you're left with pure starch that converts to glucose almost immediately in your bloodstream. The fiber in whole grains creates the delay, the buffering effect that keeps your blood sugar from spiking. Now, let's move to one of the most powerful and underused tools in blood sugar management: legumes, beans, lentils, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans, edamame. This food group deserves a moment of genuine appreciation. Legumes offer what nutritionists call the most balanced glucose management package in the plant kingdom. They contain complex carbohydrates, but those carbohydrates come packaged with enormous amounts of both soluble and insoluble fiber, plus plant-based protein, plus essential minerals. The result is one of the lowest glycemic loads of any food that contains carbohydrates. Lentils have a GI of around 30, black beans around 30, chickpeas around 28. Post-meal blood glucose responses to a meal containing legumes are dramatically blunted compared to the same calories from refined carbohydrates. But legumes also do something additional. They feed the beneficial bacteria in your gut, your microbiome. And emerging research suggests that a healthy gut microbiome is directly linked to better blood sugar regulation and improved insulin sensitivity. When you eat beans regularly, you are not just feeding yourself. You are feeding the trillions of bacteria that help regulate your metabolism. Practical guidance: aim for half a cup to 1 cup of legumes at least 4 times per week. Add black beans to scrambled eggs. Toss chickpeas into a salad. Build a lentil soup. Use hummus made from chickpeas as a dip instead of crackers. The options are endless and the payoff is substantial. Now let's talk about berries: blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. These are fruits with a secret weapon. First, they are very low in sugar compared to most other fruits. A cup of raspberries contains only about 5 grams of sugar. A cup of mango contains 24. That difference is enormous when it comes to blood sugar. But berries don't just avoid raising blood sugar. They may actively help lower it. Berries are rich in compounds called anthocyanins, the pigments that give them their deep red, blue, and purple colors. Research has found that anthocyanins improve insulin sensitivity, reduce post-meal blood glucose elevation, and may even protect pancreatic beta cells, the cells in your pancreas responsible for producing insulin. Studies have shown that regular consumption of blueberries improves insulin sensitivity in obese, insulin-resistant individuals. This is not a subtle effect. It is a meaningful, measurable improvement in the core defect of type 2 diabetes. The practical advice: berries are the safest fruit choice for blood sugar management. Fresh or frozen, both are excellent. Add them to oatmeal, plain Greek yogurt, or eat them as a snack. They satisfy the sweet craving while actively working in your favor metabolically. Now I want to talk about something that transforms every meal you eat: protein. Protein does not raise blood sugar. Unlike carbohydrates, which are converted to glucose, dietary protein is used primarily for building and repair. But protein does something even more important in the context of blood sugar. It slows the digestion of everything else in the meal. When you pair protein with carbohydrates, the carbohydrates digest more slowly, glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually, and the post-meal spike is significantly reduced. This is one of the most consistently demonstrated effects in nutrition science, and it is the reason that every evidence-based recommendation for blood sugar management emphasizes balanced meals with a protein component at every eating occasion. The best protein sources for blood sugar management include eggs, which have essentially zero carbohydrate content and are extraordinarily nutrient dense, fatty fish, which we will come to in a moment, lean poultry like chicken and turkey, Greek yogurt, which also contains probiotics, tofu and tempeh for plant-based eaters, and legumes, which provide both protein and fiber. Let's talk about eggs specifically. Eggs have had a complicated public reputation over the decades, largely because of concerns about cholesterol. But the current evidence is clear. For most people, dietary cholesterol has a minimal effect on blood cholesterol, and eggs are one of the most blood sugar-friendly foods available. Multiple studies have found that eating eggs for breakfast leads to significantly lower post-meal glucose levels compared to high-carbohydrate breakfasts. Eggs contain choline, lutein, zeaxanthin, vitamin D, and high-quality protein that keeps you satiated for hours. A satiated person does not snack on high GI processed food at 10 in the morning. Satiety itself is a blood sugar management tool. Now, why fatty fish? Salmon, sardines, mackerel, herring, anchovies. These are among the most nutritionally potent foods on Earth for metabolic health. Fatty fish are rich in omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA. These long-chain fatty acids reduce systemic inflammation, and inflammation is directly linked to insulin resistance. The more inflamed your body is, the worse your cells respond to insulin. Omega-3 fats work in the opposite direction. A study published in the British Journal of Nutrition found significantly lower blood glucose levels after meals that included oily fish. A 2021 review found that people who regularly ate fatty fish experienced measurably better blood sugar regulation. Additionally, fatty fish provides high-quality protein, bringing all the meal-slowing benefits we discussed, plus vitamin D, which is independently associated with improved insulin sensitivity. The recommendation from most clinical nutrition guidelines is to eat fatty fish at least twice per week. Salmon is easy to bake, grill, or pan-sear. Sardines in olive oil on whole grain crackers is a fast, nutrient-packed snack. Canned mackerel in salad takes minutes to prepare. These are not exotic, expensive interventions. They are practical, accessible choices. Now let's talk about healthy fats more broadly. Fat was demonized for decades, and the result was a food industry that replaced fat with refined carbohydrates, which are dramatically worse for blood sugar. The rehabilitation of healthy fats in nutrition science is one of the most important dietary shifts of the last 20 years. Healthy fats slow digestion. They reduce the glycemic impact of any meal they're part of. They also promote the feeling of fullness that prevents overeating carbohydrates. 3 sources of healthy fat deserve special attention: avocados, nuts and seeds, and olive oil. An avocado is a metabolic marvel. It contains 13.5 grams of fiber per medium fruit, combined with minimal carbohydrate content and substantial magnesium, both of which independently improve blood sugar. Avocados are rich in oleic acid, the same monounsaturated fat found in olive oil, which has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity. Research has consistently found that incorporating avocado into meals leads to lower post-meal blood glucose levels compared to the same meal without avocado. Add half an avocado to scrambled eggs in the morning, and you have radically improved the blood sugar profile of that breakfast. Nuts, almonds, walnuts, pistachios, cashews, pecans are equally powerful. A study found that eating approximately 2 ounces of almonds was associated with lower fasting insulin and lower fasting glucose levels. Almonds consumed before a meal have been shown to significantly reduce post-meal glucose elevation. Walnuts offer a similar metabolic benefit with the added advantage of plant-based omega-3 fatty acids. The critical caveat with nuts is portion size. Nuts are calorie dense. A handful, or roughly 1 ounce or about 20 to 25 almonds, is the appropriate serving. Not a bag. Not a handful every time you walk through the kitchen. A measured portion with intention. Seeds, particularly chia seeds and ground flaxseed, deserve their own spotlight. Chia seeds are extraordinary. 1 ounce of chia seeds contains nearly 10 grams of fiber. When chia seeds make contact with liquid, they form a thick gel, and that gel-forming property in your gut is precisely what slows glucose absorption so dramatically. Research suggests chia seeds may also support the health of pancreatic beta cells. Sprinkle a tablespoon of ground flaxseed over your oatmeal or yogurt. Mix chia seeds into water and let them sit for 10 minutes before drinking. These are minimal effort, maximum impact additions to a daily routine. Olive oil, specifically extra virgin olive oil, is one of the most studied foods in nutritional medicine. It reduces inflammation through its content of oleic acid and polyphenols, improves insulin sensitivity, and has been associated with reduced risk of type 2 diabetes in large population studies. The Mediterranean diet, which is anchored by olive oil, is consistently one of the top-performing dietary patterns for blood sugar management in clinical research. Use extra virgin olive oil as your default cooking fat. Dress your salads with it. Drizzle it on vegetables. Replace butter in cooking when you can. Now let's talk about one of the most surprising tools in blood sugar management: apple cider vinegar. I want to be clear that apple cider vinegar is not a miracle cure, and it should not replace any medication or medical advice. But the evidence for its blood sugar lowering effect is genuinely compelling. The active compound is acetic acid, the acid that gives vinegar its sharp taste. Acetic acid works by inhibiting certain digestive enzymes in the stomach, slowing the breakdown of starch, and reducing how much glucose enters the bloodstream from a given meal. A 2019 study found that apple cider vinegar can improve insulin sensitivity after meals. Multiple studies have shown that consuming apple cider vinegar before or with a carbohydrate-heavy meal reduces the post-meal blood glucose spike meaningfully. The practical protocol that has been most studied is 1 to 2 tablespoons diluted in a glass of water, consumed before a meal. The dilution is not optional. Undiluted vinegar can damage tooth enamel and irritate the esophagus. You can also use it as a salad dressing, combined with olive oil. It tastes good that way, and your blood sugar will thank you. Next, cinnamon, specifically Ceylon cinnamon, which is a point I want to make clearly because it matters. Most cinnamon sold in grocery stores is cassia cinnamon, which contains high levels of a compound called coumarin. In large daily doses, coumarin can cause liver damage. Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes called true cinnamon, contains only trace amounts of coumarin and is the safe variety for regular supplemental use. The active compounds in Ceylon cinnamon, including cinnamaldehyde and cinnamic acid, appear to improve insulin sensitivity and slow the absorption of sugar in the digestive tract. Multiple studies have found that cinnamon supplementation reduces fasting blood glucose and A1C levels. A tablespoon stirred into oatmeal or a half teaspoon in a smoothie is a simple, low-risk addition that the evidence supports. If you are already on diabetes medication or blood thinners, check with your doctor before using cinnamon supplements specifically, as there can be interactions. Sprinkling a small amount on food, however, is generally safe for everyone. Turmeric is another spice with meaningful blood sugar benefits. The active compound in turmeric is curcumin, which has powerful anti-inflammatory properties. Since chronic inflammation is a major driver of insulin resistance, reducing inflammation improves insulin sensitivity. Studies have shown that turmeric supplementation can help regulate blood sugar levels and reduce A1C. Adding turmeric to roasted vegetables, soups, or warm drinks like golden milk is an easy way to incorporate it. Combined with black pepper, which dramatically increases curcumin absorption. Turmeric becomes even more effective. Now let's talk about fermented foods and the gut microbiome connection, because this is an area where the science has advanced significantly. Greek yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, tempeh, these are foods rich in live bacterial cultures called probiotics. Your gut microbiome, the community of trillions of microorganisms living in your digestive tract, plays a role in regulating metabolism, inflammation, and blood sugar that researchers are only beginning to fully understand. Studies have found that people with type 2 diabetes tend to have less diverse gut microbiomes than healthy individuals. Probiotic-rich foods may help restore microbial diversity. Kefir and plain yogurt without added sugar have been shown in studies to improve post-meal blood sugar levels, reduce fasting blood sugar, and lower A1C over time. Plain Greek yogurt specifically is exceptional. It is high in protein, which slows carbohydrate digestion. It contains probiotics, and it has a low glycemic index. It is one of the most blood sugar-friendly foods available. Choose plain, full-fat, or low-fat Greek yogurt without added sugar, and add your own berries for sweetness. This is categorically different from flavored yogurt, which can contain as much sugar as a candy bar. Now I want to spend time on something that is just as important as knowing what to eat, understanding what not to eat and why. Because even the healthiest diet can be undermined if you don't recognize the foods that actively worsen blood sugar and insulin resistance. The single most damaging food category for blood sugar is refined carbohydrates: white bread, white rice, white pasta, crackers, most breakfast cereals, pastries, muffins, bagels. These foods have had their fiber stripped away in processing, leaving pure starch that converts to blood glucose almost instantly. Starch begins turning into sugar within 15 minutes of eating it and can rush into the bloodstream very quickly. The spike is dramatic, the insulin response is massive, and the repeated demand on your pancreas, day after day, meal after meal, contributes to the progression from normal blood sugar to insulin resistance to prediabetes to type 2 diabetes. Sugar-sweetened beverages deserve their own warning. Soda, fruit juice, sweetened iced tea, energy drinks, flavored coffee drinks. These are arguably the most dangerous category for blood sugar of anything in the modern food supply. Liquid calories bypass many of the satiety signals that solid food triggers. There is no fiber, no protein, no fat to slow the glucose absorption. The sugar arrives in your bloodstream almost immediately and in enormous quantities.